Hi, welcome to the Free Art School, where we talk about living a long creative life in terms of practical matters and what's most meaningful. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with artist Phil Chang. Thank you for joining me, Phil.
Thank you for having me.
We've been showing at the same gallery together for over a decade and aware of each other's work for 2 decades. And Phil's both an artist and an educator at, do you say Cal State Bakersfield?
Cal State Bakersfield, yes.
And Bard. Anyway, so I appreciate you being here. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. Thank you. I'm good. And it's nice to be here and go on record about this and maybe expound on some things that I've learned along the way.
So did you want to start with any one of the questions in particular? We have a few.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be great. I could respond to like what's my family background in relationship to art. And that basically is none whatsoever. I am the first generation of like a Chinese immigrant family. My parents came to the United States in the 1960s. They went to Berkeley, of all places, during the kind of social and civil rights movements. They were both scientists, and they had me and my brother were the firstborn American kind of generation for my family. I didn't have a understanding of art. I, in fact, have an undergraduate degree in sociology and history, but I came to art based on a fluke. My father, as a good Chinese immigrant as he was really worried about my kind of economic prospects. So he bought me a subscription to Fortune magazine. This was in the 90s. And with the magazine subscription came with it this promotional 35 millimeter wind up default panoramic camera that I started using instead. And I never read the magazine, Fortune magazine, that is. I just started using this camera. And that was kind of my introduction to photography. And then photography became an introduction for art. I went to the California Institute of the Arts for graduate school about 7 years after my undergraduate degree. And it was in graduate school where I discovered a relationship not only to photography, but then to contemporary art as well.
Did you go to undergraduate in California as
I
well?
did, yes. Undergraduate was at UC Irvine.
And you are based in Los Angeles area now?
Correct, yeah. And I've been in LA since 1992.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Another interesting question was like, could I make a chart or diagram of how I spend my creative time? And I thought that was a compelling question because I don't think a chart could exist. I would say if I had percentages, it would be like 75% just life demands. That could be, for me, being middle aged, like aging parents, raising a child. I have a 13-year-old son, seeing to kind of like daily administration. And then I would say 20% is art. And then the other 5% is just, rest or just non middle age stuff and non-art stuff. So just for you to break that kind of division, only 20% is right now is art. But I would also say like mentally and cognitively, I'm thinking about art a lot. I'm always thinking, even though I might not be physically in production, I'm like cognitively and mentally in production.
Oh yeah, the back operating system is running in the background all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Of that physical 20% of the hours that you spend physically doing art, like about what percentage of that's making art and what percentage of that's like dealing with all the stuff around getting art from here to there or
Yeah, it gets even more like particular. I would say 5% is production and then 15% is administration, social personality management, and then applying to grants or applying to residencies. I don't have an assistant, so I have to really wear many hats. This is not to say that teaching is a form, I'm excluding teaching as a form of production, but it is one for me. Like if I wasn't teaching, I don't think I would be feeling productive, but the teaching of art, the roles of my job is three-part. It's teaching, it's administrative service, and then it's research. But teaching takes up a huge part of my life right now because I primarily work for a public sector university. And it's a teaching heavy institution versus a research heavy institution.
is the research both for the teaching and stimulating to your own practice?
It's really designed for the university itself to kind of promote knowledge and meet their criteria. But it does definitely. This is the only job I've ever found where research, in my case, production of art, is factored into the job. It just so happens that I don't work for a research university where they promote research, or in this case, the production of art. They promote more teaching. So that's why I was saying earlier, the teaching takes up a lot of my time.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got a little twisted on the
That's okay.
amount of time you spent researching and teaching and researching.
Yeah, yeah. But really when it comes down to it, I would say 5% is production, 15% is the other things related, the peripheral activity, the kind of surplus labor, I think, that's involved in being an artist. Whether it's going to support friends at openings, traveling for various things, whether it's my own shows or a lecture or trying to see art elsewhere. And then just administration. That could be anything from updating a website, updating a CV. Um, Applying to grants lately have been probably the most biggest part of that percentage pie for me is applying to grants. And I've been doing that actively.
So time consuming.
Very time consuming, but
Got to put your heart in it, and
it
also
really
very unlikely you'll get the grant. It's
the
really
very low
draining.
yield. I know. But I think it's very similar to, I remember when I was actively trying to find gallery representation, that's also very low yield given the amount of labor you put up for that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, this is actually so there's that is something I've added to the list of questions about like people who either ha are young and haven't worked with a gallery or outside the arts. They always ask like, how do you work with a gallery? And it is very hard to talk about this nuanced, strange relationship, how it develops, and how it's not like applying for a job. It's a little bit more like trying to find a life partner.
it is, right. Yeah. And the process of finding one is like a courtship process. There's no prenuptials. There could be, but in my experience, in lieu of prenuptial, there's no contracts are signed. That hasn't been my experience. A lot of it is based on rapport, informal mechanisms of etiquette, informal mechanisms of they're still transactional, but they're really enforced by different social mores and values, which is really interesting to me.
I'm just curious, how did your first gallery relationship begin?
It began in 2012 with this now defunct gallery called Pep& More. They were based in LA. They took over, if any of your viewers know of how Chinatown in Los Angeles was a really important destination for art and community and neighborhood. Chinatown has had 3 to 4 different incarnations, and they were probably in the second incarnation of Chinatown. They took over a space, a really important gallery called China Art Objects. They took over that physical space. So that was my first experience. I did a group exhibition with them first to kind of feel out what that was like working with them. And by group exhibition, I mean I organized an exhibition. I did have my own work in it, and I really liked working with them. And then they asked me to do a solo exhibition. That was my first commercial solo exhibition. Was in 2012.
So you came to them, you pitched curating a show. Essentially, you came to them with an offer to do a bunch of work for them without needing something for them. I think that's some of the problem with galleries is they think you feel like you can't ask them, can't bring them a need, but if you can offer them to give them something is a great way to start a relationship.
That really worked out for me. I did the same thing with the gallery that you and I share, M&B too, where I co-organized a group exhibition with Matthew Porter, and that was in 2014. And I found in my experience, I'm not trying to find a way just to have a direct access to a market. I mean, I think the gallery provides that, but I'm also looking for a kind of collaborative business partner, so to speak. And the organizing a group exhibition without including my work in it was always a really good way to test out a potential relationship.
Right, because you figure out if they are good at business and the way they communicate, and then you display your good email normal social skills. It can be rare. So, Phil, we're talking about, I was just saying about the like how much time one spends applying for grants, but I also want to congratulate you on getting a Guggenheim this
Thank
year.
you. Thank you. And
And
that really
then,
connects to another question that I think you poignantly put out there to me, and that was like, what is it like when you get something that you want, and what are some of the, emotional feelings that are brought up by that? And this is something I learned from Beth Pickens, who is a really interesting kind of art consultant, offers a lot of like workshops online. And I took a Guggenheim workshop that she did, and she had this really great motto that she shared with all the participants, including me, and that was apply to it every year until you get it or die. And as morbid as it sounded, it was very practical, and I took that to heart. So I kept on applying, and I got it this year, which I was really surprised about, and it definitely surfaced a lot of kind of emotions and responses of, wow, I got something I want, and now what do I do with that? But it also taught me that some of the works I make that I applied to were fundable, meaning that I think they were good candidates for grant funding. And that was a really good lesson for me to figure out, what type of works do we make as artists that are maybe more eligible than other types of work for grant funding?
yeah, that is a really good point is about like it isn't about the value of your work or you as an artist, but what the grant is looking for, what makes sense to them, what they want to fund, what makes sense with their agenda. I was applying for something and I had thrown out my back and I had a cold and there was 2 days to
Oh,
apply. And so I admit I turned to the AI for advice and I asked it questions that I didn't think it would answer, which are I just was alone and needed someone to talk to. Scary sounding. I said, "What 10 images should I apply with?" And it wrote back something that a human had told me many years ago, but it didn't sink in. It said, "Not with your 10 favorite images. The
mm,
10 images of work that's been exhibited most publicly and would likely have been seen by people and had impact on other people." Yeah, I was like, "Oh no, I always just apply with my 10 favorite images."
yeah, I know. Well, leave it to AI. I wonder if that was GPT or Claude, but they can really
It was,
expose some things that you're
yeah.
just not thinking about. It's done that for me too.
It was GPT, but I it was very similar to something a human consultant had said years ago. I just kind of didn't it was the timing of needing to hear it
Hmm.
and it did rhyme with what a human being had said.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's good. So there's a resonance to that.
I always just apply with like the works that were most meaningful, like turning points in my own practice.
I
And I
know
think,
I've learned I've had to be a better editor when it comes to like the selection of the works that you submit. Yeah, and then in terms of maybe considering what the grant is, the funder is looking for, and what I think the time in history in which they're functioning and operating, and they're governed by certain political forces and market demands too.
yeah, I mean, I like to think maybe if I suddenly was the person administering, I had like some political agenda I was trying to fund, then who's inside the grant, they have something they want to do, and
But yeah,
you gotta try to get outside yourself, and hopefully someone, a friend, can help you think about yourself, look at yourself from the outside.
right, exactly. And there's an interesting segue, I think, or connection to like our earlier kind of conversation about working with galleries or finding a gallerist or dealer to work with. And I think there's a similar set of concerns there. It's trying to identify, let's say, with a gallery or the dealer, like what are they looking for and what do they need? I would say maybe finding the process of finding a gallery to work with is a little bit more in person and immediate, whereas the grant writing and finding a funder is much more, I think, distant and detached because you're applying to something through a procedural application process, less so with finding a gallery.
Also, well, I want to go back. Like, did something really good happening after years and years of trying, like, kind of freak you out?
It
And
did.
and what would you do about that freak out?
Mhm. I got an email. For instance, the Guggenheim Fellowship is probably the most present example of this because it happened this year, just in May. I received an email from them and I thought it was spam. And so I really thought it because it was also a very, generic email. It wasn't on letterhead, of course, his email isn't. So there was no way to really verify it. So what I did was I called a friend who also received a Guggenheim the previous year, and he was able to confirm that no, this is real.
Well,
So
that's
that's how I handled
crazy.
it.
You kind
Yeah.
of just like fishing.
But especially, I just thought, someone had obviously scraped my email account and could figure out a way in. But I didn't write the funder. I didn't write the foundation itself to verify. I actually had to call a friend to make sure.
Yeah.
But it was like winning the lottery. That was the close of analogy for me. I I feel fortunate because I won it based on, if some of your viewers know, if they don't, my works that I applied with and the works I'm really actively making right now are unfixed photographs or unstable, and they last for about 4 to 5 hours. The light, you need to view them, make them transform to monochrome. And so I was really stunned. That was another reason why I was in disbelief that I couldn't believe the Guggenheim wanted to award based on these types of unstable photographic materials that I use. And so that was another way to think about a response. And that made it actually also, as an emotional experience, like this is very interesting that they're awarding this. I never thought that it could be seen in this way or supported in that way. Um, I've thought about that in terms of a lot of the works that I've made, and it's hard to verify the degree of support you receive on something you make until you maybe have an exhibition of it, and whether the exhibition maybe gets reviewed, let's say, that's another form of recognition or support. But I think it's important, maybe especially maybe I'm understanding your audience to be maybe a younger one. to think about the long view too, about how your works kind of travel through time and how different responses can accumulate based on that work. And so that's what I've been trying to hold out for. And that kind of tempered, Mariah, my initial response of, wow, is this real? Or questioning it, second guessing it, what have you, being critical of the recognition. I realized that maybe if I could just hold out more for time to let the work elapse in time and to see what types of responses it can generate.
You mean working on similar work or letting time go by and, oh, how do I say this? Like, I think I've experienced this too. Like, maybe when you first make work, it seems like people aren't responding the way you wish they were, or
Yeah,
perhaps, or
exactly.
fully. Like,
Exactly.
there's one read, and that read can be colored by other work that's being made at the time that you have nothing to do with.
Yes,
Get kind
exactly.
of a meta narrative.
Mhm.
And then as time goes by, that a lot of that contemporary stuff can filter away, and you get to be seen on your own with like 20 years of a similar project or returning to themes,
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
Exactly. That's one way to think about it. That's been helpful for me to kind of maybe work through. I would call them like knee-jerk reactions of being self-critical. That's what happened with me when I received the Guggenheim Award. And that's fine. That was just my reaction, but I knew that wasn't going to be concrete or long-standing. I just
Oh,
need,
do you mean you're self-critical? Like, what does that mean?
well, there's for me, it was, do I deserve this? These are
Oh,
right. There's
does
like
anyone deserve it?
it's something as simple as that. Um, it was an interesting experience. I've never. I should also say to your viewers that I've never received a grant. This was the first one. I received small ones through when I was in graduate school, but there was a period where I wasn't applying to these grants. I just didn't feel like I was eligible. I didn't feel like I was a candidate for it. But all that has changed now. It's really made me realize the importance of applying to these things. And again, the motto that I learned from Beth Pickens, just apply every year until you get it or you die, has been so helpful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do any self-care though? Like, because I've asked everybody about what they do after a big show or a big project, how they manage their adrenaline or other, drugs their brain's been pumping
Mhm.
out for itself to keep going for a few weeks or months. But I imagine that that's like a big dose of adrenaline getting that good news.
It
Must be.
was. It really was. I was trying to figure out how to sustain it. What helps me is exercise. Um, and so that really helps. And then diet, of course, sleep, socializing in healthy ways. I'm not talking about kind of like the parasitic form of socializing that some of us have to do or choose to do. I mean, like healthy socializing with people that count or like friends and family. That really helps. But exercise has been one. Um, yeah, if I had to go through the list of self-care, it's sleep, socializing, exercise, diet. Those have been really helpful kind of coping mechanisms.
So then I feel like that's a good time for this question is, do you have moments when you feel like you don't know what is the next step?
I do, but now that I'm 20 years into this profession, I've been able to catch myself when I feel that moment of it's an anxiety, right? An anxiety of like fear of the unknown or fear of uncertainty, but I feel much better than I did when I was younger. I think having a foundation in which one is kind of built and then seeing how people respond to that foundation, in this case, making certain projects with using photography or teaching, for instance, that helps to remind myself, okay, there's a foundation here. I just need to get back to that.
What do you
And then
do to like specifically to remind yourself of the foundation?
literally just telling myself of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Literally just catching myself and internally, privately saying that. And then secondly, it's funny to go on record. I review my CV to remind myself what I've accomplished and what worked and to try to get myself back to, let's say, 2012. What was I thinking then? Right. And then if I see what I put down in the public record of my document and achievements, that always helps me. And I've come to really appreciate seeing that document grow and grow in the past 20 years. It's unfortunate that we have to do it, but I think it's important that we do it. That is to complete a CV, to complete a record of our accomplishments.
Yeah. Do you remember being young and like having two or three things on there and like trying to like squeeze any sort
Yeah,
of thing
totally.
into a resume point?
I know, changing the type size and the margins. Yeah, yeah,
I think the point is that all times, at the beginning, the middle, at any point, this career, this life, this project, whether or not it's like professional showing or you're what type of artist, but just a creative person. Since we're all like sensitive and self-aware of that sensitivity, it just like whatever at any point it all feels crazy.
Mhm.
It's either you don't have enough or you have too much, too many things on your mind, or not enough things, or everyone else is often they say that like someone's always more successful and has more money. It's
I
like
know.
don't compare yourself to other people and just try to stay focused on like all moments are anxiety inducing, and also all stages of creative life are beautiful and worthwhile in their way.
They are. Yes, I agree. I think this profession, if you call it maybe being an artist or working in the contemporary art world, it's high cost, high reward. I think it requires a lot of upfront capital or debt to get things made, let's say, or to circulate your work, to travel for things, to survive, let's say, in order to make your work and whatever choices one makes to survive. I would say employment, let's say, or maybe acknowledging maybe shared wealth that's generational or family based. So those are costs, and then there's emotional cost to it. I think, like you're describing, it's high cost. This is not a stable profession we're in at all. It's highly volatile, you know, but the rewards can be high. I think when you get them, I think they can be incredibly gratifying. I think they can be incredibly confrontational. Sometimes I think they kind of challenge what your expectations were in the beginning and what you were seeking. I like to think of a low cost, high reward profession would probably be plumbing. I think, and I don't mean to disparage plumbing. I think it's never going to be automated.
Everybody needs it.
Everyone needs it, and it's a trade that's really important. And so I think there's relatively low costs that can go into it, but the reward could be high,
I
right?
mean, yeah, plumbers make a lot of money.
They
I
do.
don't know how long the apprenticeship is or the how long you study.
Hmm. But I like to think of like low cost, low high reward professions,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think plumbing's a really good way to
You got
think
any
about
other
that.
ones?
You know, I think a high cost, high reward non-art example for me is parenting. That's high cost, high reward because it's not consistent, at least with my experience of parenting. And then I think as an American, it costs quite a bit financially to have a child in this country because we don't really have universal generalized healthcare or childcare that's provided. But the rewards can be incredibly gratifying, and they're few and far between. Hold out for those rewards. Yeah.
Maybe we could wrap up by me asking you about like what are some of those rewards or like what keeps you going or is most sustaining to you about being an artist for your whole life.
Yes, it's taken me 20 years to figure this out. Now, it's really community and the dialogue between artists, writers, curators, theorists, scholars, practitioners. I've just received so much kind of profound knowledge and gratification from that exchange. And so that is all to say that I think being an artist for me is also being not only in production of something that's going to contribute to hopefully something, whether it's discourse or culture, but being in dialogue with these people, these various different people throughout my life, have been the most rewarding. I think there's easier ways to live a life than being an artist, but I think very few of them allow for certain rewards like this, and that is being in a milieu or being in conversation and an exchange that I find can be more reciprocal with artists, writers, curators, theorists, historians, scholars, what have you. That's been very rewarding. I haven't included dealers in there because I think it's been in my experience that it just hasn't happened in that way for me. And I think it's because of the type of work that I make and maybe the place that photography has right now within the contemporary art world as this, as we're speaking on November 10th, 2025, we're still in like a severe economic contraction in the art world. And I think photography as a medium, if you want that to be art, also then always suffers in relationship to economic functions in the art world. That's all to say that relationship with these types of individuals I've spoken about and their kind of professional designation in the art world has been the most rewarding for me.
I feel like this is a great time to do a plug for Otfra, our friend Matthew
Oh,
Porter's
yes. Yes. Yes.
podcast, which is all about this early 2000s period in photography, like right before the advent of the iPhone and
Mhm.
the period of material exploration in photography, and then right before a devaluation, it seems like,
Yes.
in photography as a fine art medium because everyone has a phone. everyone is a photographer or can be,
Hmm.
which is a great thing in a bunch of ways.
Hmm.
But photography's always kind of suffered a lack of respect and amongst the other media, which is
Yes.
silly.
It is. It is. But it's just the burden to bear, you know? And I think it makes, if it wasn't for this very much burden, I probably wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met various other artists who work in photography or adjacent to it, precisely because of these conditions that surround photography that make it difficult to circulate different periods, I think. And I'm glad you brought up that Hot Fraught podcast has been really important to me too, as a kind of a historical record.
Yeah, it's a real deep dive.
Hmm.
It's actually really great before we all forget to tell these stories. I was a Phil and I were guests.
I think it's a really great kind of oral history for it. And I've been meeting younger people, and by that I mean people who are about 15 to 20 years younger than me,
Mhm.
that are showing an interest in this period. And so that's been really great. And Art Fraud has allowed them access to that period.
I will put a link in the show notes
Oh,
here.
great.
You know, it's funny. It's so dumb, but I mean, people, there's a question for me about if I'm art, do I go by artist or photographer? People introduce me in public as a photographer, but then they will shoot me a look and they'll ask if that's correct.
Oh, right. I know. There's always that too. It's just another burden, right, to deal with.
Yeah, and then I also have people don't think I can do standard photography because I do all this material stuff, and they're always like shocked if I were to
Yeah,
display
exactly.
actual skills.
I know. I know.
Look at me, I gave myself backlighting.
Good. Yeah. You have a seamless no less too. But you're bringing up a good point. There's a lot of presumptions that are imposed on photography as a medium and those who practice it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would say there's less presumptions with painting and less presumptions with sculpture.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
if I
unless you're a house painter, right? And then people think you're a fine art or contemporary painter, which is maybe the closest thing. But
yeah, there's that too.
yeah,
There are a ton of assumptions people make when you meet them out in public that have a lot to do with like skill and also with class. And I notice people who know nothing about the arts will always ask me if I make my living as an artist, and then but they have a judgmental tone as if they won't accept fully that I'm an artist if I have another job.
yes, I know.
And
That's a terrible double standard.
I'm like, well, you don't actually do not know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Who are you?
Yeah, I know.
And they always, if you say artist, they say painter question.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I know.
And
I
then
don't know. I think there's ways that maybe to parlay that into interesting conversations, depending on the context of where you're at. I've also tried to like periodically use in a selective format. I'm a photographer who uses art, or I'm an artist who uses photography, or I'm just a photographer. I can try to code switch with the language sometimes. Yeah,
yeah, I've been saying calling people photo artists,
photo artist. There you go. That's good. Yeah.
but sometimes I got asked this question and I'd say, it depends if you are like I'm going into England or to Canada, crossing the border. I sort of feel out what answer, artist or photographer, will go make this conversation go more smoothly.
Mm. That's interesting. Yeah, you can think about nationality and the culture that
Like, what's
defines.
going on in this country? What do they
Mhm.
not want? Which one do
Yeah.
they want less?
I'm done with being disparaging over painting or sculpture. I just think it's fine. They just benefit from those media being understood immediately as art. And I think there's a lot of worth to picking through these assumptions. And there's an ideological complex that gets, I think, attached to photography that if we're going to try to use it as art or want to circulate with the contemporary art, that we just have to face. And I think it can be rife and really useful information. It's almost like taking the temperature of culture. And I think AI now will be probably the next challenge for the medium that we use too. I mean, this medium photography always has to confront different challenges.
Yes, because it's also been the documenter of fact for quite 150 years or so.
Right, exactly.
Um, and now those are more mutable than before.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Interesting. Love talking about photo stuff. We'll do it another
Me too.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought I wouldn't. I always thought it was so pointless when people would obsess over photo material details. But now I'm like, oh, what kind of surface you got
Yeah,
there?
but I know, I know. Trying to just like, yeah.
I
Those
became
artists, I don't know if you know Peter Tomka, who just did a exhibition at Bellamy in LA.
okay.
Okay, yeah, he basically was able to theatricalize the black and white dark room in this gallery, and it was actually really well done and great.
It's
And so,
nice to see that.
yeah, but it became this occasion for people to talk about light sensitivity and DMAX and like developer chemistry, which is just great to see. And this was made public to people to attend. And it was cool. And it happens at a certain time in culture where less and less people understand light sensitivity.
Yes. Someone just was busting me my chops on Instagram because I did a video with um my hometown museum has a piece of mine and we did a social media video and I was just trying to explain the basics of color darkroom, which means, you have I said it was like working with blindfolded because it's a totally black environment.
Mhm.
And then someone was just busting me in all caps that about that I was showing off about how cool I could be, how to make my work while blindfolded. It's also on
Oh,
the same day that I whacked my head really hard on a paper cutter in a color dark room, and I'm like, it is hard. It's hard
that's yeah, that's unforgiving. Yeah.
in the dark. And I was just explaining it because people don't know. And if they have a reference, it's usually from a TV or film
Yeah.
of a black and white dark room with the red or orange light.
Hmm.
Anyway, whatever.
Well, again, we have to always confront and deal with these assumptions. Yeah, my way through is like photography doesn't have to be art. It really doesn't. There's so many uses of it, and it's going to continue because it's so useful. Um, and if I'm going to try to use it as art, then I have to deal with this, what I like to call the photographic baggage of culture. And then these are presumptions that are imposed on a different use of it.
Yeah, that's one of the fascinating things about it as a medium, all that other stuff that comes with it.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much, Phil. I
You're very
really
welcome.
appreciate it. I'm so glad we could do this.
No,
And
thank
it's
you.
really nice to see you,
Good to see you
at least
too.
virtually.